Hey everybody, welcome back to the Looking Glass podcast. With me as always is my good friend Tommy. How you doing, Tommy?
Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah, I'm doing good. Really not a whole bunch going on. So yeah, we got a few things that we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna let Seth go ahead and take the lead.
There we go. Now I'm back online. So today, what we're going to talk about is in today's age, what is it to be human? And I think one of the biggest issues that we have today is we have a lot of solitude issues. Like we like to seclude ourselves from everybody, and we're going to kind of go into the topics of like why that could be a good thing and why it couldn't be a good thing at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Tommy to see what some of his perspectives are, and then we're going to come back to me, and then we'll take it from there.
It is both a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, I would say. Understanding to a point where a lot of society has gotten to the point of being you're not being able to trust someone, and it kind of really puts yourself into a solitude safe area, I would say, almost. But also with that being an issue, which if you're not able to mentally maintain being in solitude and joyful and happy and in your own solitude, that where it really stems to be a big problem. Um, I know several people that, they're pretty solitude to the world and they're happy as can be. And there's others that are solitude and they're not as happy. It goes even vice versa for the people that are out and socializing are absolutely uh, depressed, but yet in with the crowd. So for me personally, I'm quiet, kind of solitude to a point. Um, but yeah, I personally choose it that way to keep my circle closed. I'll communicate with other people and talk to them, but as in all going out and doing things, isn't really so much of my thing. Just because I keep myself pretty closed off to most of people because it's really hard to trust anyone.
Yeah, so like you were saying, I don't necessarily think solitude in and of itself is a bad thing. Sometimes we all need to kind of come back and reflect on ourselves and see how we interact with the world. So I don't think there's anything subjectively wrong with it. Objectively wrong. I'm sorry, not subjectively, objectively wrong with it. But here's my biggest point that I'm trying to get to is when does solitude and self-isolation become not a choice but a habit, right? It's a learned behavior. Now, how do we differentiate between a voluntary solitude and a force of habit solitude? And all the minute details that go into that. So for me personally, I think to a certain extent, especially with everything that's been going on as of the last 5 or 10 years. You had the financial crash in 2018, and then you had COVID, or in 2008, and then you had COVID in 2019 to 2020, 21, and then now you have people objectively and subjectively just closing themselves off. to everybody. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because here's the thing: we're human beings. We thrive on interaction. We've always been that way. With interaction, we built great things, right? So now, do you think personally, in your own opinion, do you think that solitude and confining yourself away, can that lead to a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms? Like, just for any example.
Yeah, it could lead to a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms as it goes from just from alcohol to drugs to anything else out there. But yeah, that is definitely an issue to address. Really, it's more of a cultural. Now it's to the point of just being a cultural shift where it's really it's kind of sad if the way you got the general public, you're out there, just say you're at a grocery store, you say hello to someone and they're kind of standoffish just because you said hello. It's like, what? There's a whole nother, um, it seems like the agenda is a lot bigger because a lot of people are influenced under solitude, which majority leads to bad coping mechanisms and bad emotional health to self. But, you know, as we look throughout the years, we have a lot of technology that center people in to not interact with other people. But it can be used to interact with people if you use it properly. Like, I don't want to be on playing a game with someone that's literally next door on their computer. No, I'd rather have that be an interaction that's something that's sort of, I don't know, they just choose to. But it's good to, connect people over long distances. Then we had a big old COVID, which really, the whole COVID outbreak brought people to a level of solitude more than we have seen in years of anything like that. And that would just basically keep everyone to themselves, and they're not used to adapting back out into the world again. Um,
Yeah, no, I can totally agree with that. I think some of the unhealthy mechanisms that can come from this prolonged solitude for long periods of time is that you have a very unhealthy conflict avoidance issue. So you just seclude yourself from everybody, because that fear of conflict and differing opinions, whatever it may be, just even going outside. I mean, let's be realistic about it. There are some people that can barely call out to order pizza. There are some people that refuse to leave the house and interact with friends, family, whatever it may be, and that goes into a lot of other things. And like you brought up a very good point, is the likelihood of higher rates of substance abuse. So since you went into that, I actually have some stuff pulled up on my screen here that I would like to share with y'all, because you brought that up and it was a very interesting point. So let me go ahead and bring that up for us real quick. All right. So let me get my screen share going. Let's see here. Bring this up. Minus this. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share my screen here. Right. Everybody can see my screen. Let's bring up the statistics here. All right. So this is from American Psychiatric Association. This is on their main page. I will be leaving a link in it so you guys can go ahead and read through it. So this is was this isn't recent, but this was published in May of 2023. The U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy called a loneliness public health epidemic the latest Healthy Minds monthly poll. The American Psychiatric Association finds that in early 2024, 30% of adults said that they had were said say that they have experienced more feelings of loneliness at least once a week over the past year, while 10% say they are lonely every day. Younger people are more likely to experience these feelings, with 30% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 saying that they were lonely every single day, several times a week. And then it also goes in like, this is just crazy to think that this is how far this was polled. A poll was fielded in January 10th to 12th of 2024 amongst 2,200 adults. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention definition of loneliness: feeling like you have meaningful relationships or close relationships and a sense of belonging, right? So this is what a lot of people are saying, right? This is some of the things that like look at this. Look right here. Like you brought it up yourself. 13% use drugs or alcohol to help with to help with coping mechanisms, right? 38 say that they reach out to friends or family. That's great. So we're not saying that it's an issue, but when you look at the whole pie of 2,200 adults, 13%, that's a huge amount of people that use drugs and alcohol to help them cope, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that, secluding yourself is a bad thing, but we cannot be blind to the fact that it can, once it becomes a learned behavior, you're only steps away from going down a deeper rabbit hole and getting yourself into situations where you need to sedate yourself in some type of way, whether it be drugs, alcohol, video games, get a pet, I'm just saying that this isn't normal. I remember we crave to be connected to people, whether it be friends, family, or whatever it may be. And this also leads into another point. How can this affect your worldview when you're stuck in your own echo chamber and you're only stuck with your own thoughts? And of course, when you're at home, right? You're at home and you're by yourself, you're going to do stuff that you like, right? You're going to do whatever makes you happy. But also that also puts you in your own echo chamber because you only voice and hear opinions that align with yours, right? And that can also lead to that, right? So you're going to be stuck in an echo chamber, and then you're going to have a more cynical view of the world and the people in the world around you. So I think that's a big issue that can lead into overabundance of solitude, right? Just you need some type of interaction, I'm not even saying like this right here. This is a perfect interaction because you're physically able to see the person, right? You're able to have a conversation and connect with people. I'm just saying that when you're in your phone texting, yes, texting is a great way to stay in touch, but it doesn't have any emotional drawing on it. You can't pick up on what the person is actually feeling because you can't hear, to pick up all this stuff, you have to see the body language, the tonality of how they say it. And if they're passionate about it, right? That's how you kind of get a good interaction with people. That's how you socialize. I think it also being secluded for so long, and if you do it to yourself, it's not voluntary. At some point it becomes a learned behavior and you're just going to do it more and more. Like I said, solitude in itself, it's not bad. It gives you time to reflect on yourself and it gives you time to reflect on your own personal views. But when it becomes to a point where it's unhealthy is when you start becoming more cynical of everything that happens around you and what's going on in the world. So that's my view on that one. So we're going to caveat off of that, and we're going to go into right. What's the proper balance? What's the proper balance for solitude and connecting with friends and family and stuff like that? What is the proper balance in your opinion, Tommy?
My opinion, it would be a proper balance is if you personally to feel lonely, that's when you should take the action to uh, contact someone. It could be a friend or even just honestly just try to get out to interact with people, even just going, you know, well, it's really tough to interact with other people out there because they're on the same basis. But even going out and making it attempt to talk to a few people, even just going to a grocery store, you get to talk to cashier. I mean, if you have to do something banking wise, you don't even have to. You could give up your phone mobile banking and make it something where you personally go to the bank yourself, which will give you a little bit more interaction with people, which would relieve some of that loneliness feeling you have. Something simple as that. Um, yeah, I think the fine balance is if you're feeling lonely, that means you need to interact with someone. If you're not, you're you're doing okay, and you're not having any other problems. You're doing good. So I think that would be more of the fine balance there.
Yeah, so I think like the balance in my opinion of what it should be is yes, seclude yourself, have some time to yourself, definitely learn more about yourself, get into hobbies, just don't spend your time just staying in your own echo chamber, right? You don't forcibly make yourself stay in that. Learn something new, see perspectives on other things, do research, read a book, do something that keeps you entertained. But also that in my opinion, the proper balance is this. When you are forcibly making the decision to choose solitude over interaction with other people. That's where it becomes an issue. When you are constantly choosing solitude over interaction with other human beings, right? That's where the issue comes in, I think. When you have put yourself into solitude to such an extent that you actually like being alone, right? I'm not saying that you can love being alone, right? Sometimes it's great, but here's where the issue comes in, and this is, you know, I think this is more. I don't think it's really a solitude issue, right? I think what the biggest issue is that when you're stuck inside your own head and you're stuck inside your own bubble where nobody can have differing opinions than you, right? The differences of opinions, right? This is where you start having a more cynical view on things. You start having more contempt, or yeah, it's contempt for or contempt for other people, right? Where you, for no reason whatsoever, just because they have a difference of opinion than you just don't like them. Or the world, like I said, we don't have to agree with everything that somebody says, but you need to have differing world views because maybe you can find something out that you didn't know. You can see perspectives of other people, and you just realize not all people are the same, but it doesn't mean that they're evil or bad. Right now, there are some people, right, in the world that do bad things, right? But does that mean every person in the world is bad? That's a very cynical view of how humans interact. And I found myself going down that rabbit hole for a while, right? Then I realized I'm like, I'm doing this to myself. And I don't like it. It made me feel worse every time because I was like that. I don't like that feeling. I much rather give people a chance, difference of opinions, that's fine. I give them a chance. I try to interact with them, right? I try to be cordial with them and have a good time. Just because they have different worldviews and they have different opinions on people, it doesn't mean that they're inherently bad, which goes back to our recent podcast, right? And I will state that time and time again. So now that we got that pretty much nailed down, so now we need to start looking at what is the biggest factors of relationships with family or friends. Like, what is the biggest issues that we see nowadays? And it can pertain to anything, whether it be a spouse, mother, father, sister, brother, whatever it may be. What changed so drastically that it basically destroyed the family unit and the friends that people used to hold near and dear?
So, with that, it's pretty obvious, to me, I would say. A lot of the core values of people's families kind of has slowly diminished over the past, well, definitely in the past generation, but it's slowly been disappearing is the family's core values, which really core values, morals, once those are starting to get disregarded, really everything just falls apart. That's what I clearly see there with that.
Yeah. So when it comes to like the relationships that we hold nowadays, you got to remember, you got to remember with the evolution of technology and stuff like that, we have grown closer, but yet so far apart. Right. I can give you the perfect example. Right. So here's the example that I'm going to give you. Now, when our grandparents were alive, uh, they didn't have what we had. They couldn't connect to people all over the world, right? And I think what happened was as we grew more technologically advanced, we had so many options. We weren't just stuck in like the little town that we were, right? You could reach out all across the world and find people, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That could be a very good thing. But here's what I will say is that traditional families and friends like that, you're stuck in between making a choice for yourself with people that that you've grown up with. You know their personalities, you've seen them, you grew up with them. Now, in my personal opinion, with the evolve of technology, you have so many options. I mean, for example, trying to start a family today is impossible just because of the phones that we have that have connections to everywhere, right? They can connect all across the world, right? It goes to show that people have so many options, but yet they're gonna leverage people that they've known for a very long time, and they're gonna outsource and try to start something new, completely new, right? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but what I am saying is that the family unit falls apart because of it. Because here's the thing: when you are able to reach out to the world, you can see how many options there are, and then also with people feeling self conscious about what they see on social media. You see all these top 1, 2, 3% people living lives of luxury, and then that becomes the norm, right? And then in the same way, it gives a false sense and a false ideology of what real life is actually like. You're looking at maybe the top 1, maybe the top 3% of people that live these type of lifestyles, right? And I'm not saying that you can't achieve it, but I'm just saying that it's very hard. You know what I'm saying? Like some people are Some people work their way up and they get better as they go, and then they become successful, right? But if we had everybody try to be in the top 1%, I think that skews reality, right? It skews the reality of it is okay to be working as long as you're able to provide for yourself, of course, live comfortably, don't live outside your means. That's fine. But don't let the reality of social media skew your reality, right? Like I said, and like I said, this brings up the topic of why people hold off on starting families and connecting with friends, because they have to make that decision of whether or not do I um continuously try to be a better person, which you can be a great person, you can try to always do whatever you want, right? But where does the cutoff point come? When you isolate yourself, try to become better, that's great. But like I said, not sometimes we got to be okay with being normal, making 60, $70,000 a year, right? We have to be okay with it. That's the only thing I can think of. That I think social media has given collapse to the family unit more than the friend unit, because you can make friends all over the world now, but now the family unit is suffering because of it, right? Because it used to be small little towns where you would interact with people in that town. You'd find a good person to spend your life with because you probably knew the person, right? Let's let's just be real for what it is. We have a lot of options nowadays. Now the question is, how do we come back from it? At this point in time, I don't think there is any coming back from it. I don't foresee that this issue will be solved within the next 20 years. I really don't, because people are always going to have backup options and stuff like that to do whatever they want. I mean, I'll bring up something else for you. I mean, just so we're, just so we can be more roundabout. All right, here we go. Let me bring this up for y'all. So this is just me doing some research. I'm going to share it. Here we go. The total fertility rate has dropped to a record low again in 2024, right? Significantly lower, right? Look at this. Declining rates. Birth rates have fallen for women in most age groups. The most significant declines occurring for younger women. Rising rates have increased for women ages 40 to 44 in 2023 and 2024. Older mothers, age 30. There's nothing wrong with this, but at this point, I understand that there's a lot that goes into this, socioeconomics, whatever it may be. But I also think, in a way, it's not just the socioeconomics. I think it's because people have too many options and they can't decide which options they want to take. Do I try to shoot for this 1%er, or do I stay with somebody that I know, right? And that's where I think that's another big issue that comes up, is not just the socioeconomic stuff, but it's also we have too many dang options. Oh, what's your opinion on that, Tommy?
Yeah, my overall opinion is they have their own little. Well, what happens with social media is basically these fantasy standards get put into their mind of someone, a perfect someone that's better than that person. Really, uh, no, that's not the case. You could be that rich celebrity or whatever, They're not no better than the next person you're gonna meet once you get down to the surface and you see who they really are. I think it's people want pursuing relationships should really take into consideration what's what's beneath the surface, what is their true heart's intent on things, and not just what they're able to see from the outside. Um, yeah, I really don't got much more to really say on that. It's just basically get off the phones and social media and all that, then reevaluate things.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. Sometimes we need to take a break off social media. We need to do hobbies. We need to connect with other people. So, like I said, I think social media, with all the positives it can have, it also has a tremendous amount of unrealistic standards. When you have 80-90% of the population saying that they don't make enough money, it's because I think what happens is, yes, I'm not denying that the job market isn't as good as it was. I am not denying that. I'm not saying that things aren't different social in the social economics of things, right? And economics, but we're not going to talk about economics in this video, right? So I think what happens generally is when you have all these unrealistic standards that are put upon normal everyday people, it makes them want to seclude so they can become better for themselves. But at the same time, when you waste your time doing this stuff, or if you do it and you succeed, great. But this doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time. When you seclude yourself and you want to work on yourself, great. Do that. But also make time for yourself to go out there to actually interact with other people. Um, Also, I think the real shortfall is I don't think people genuinely actually interact and have a lot of friends. I think that's what leads also to the solitude and the diminishing of the families the family tradition, right? It kind of just falls apart because we don't interact with each other on a normal basis. Texting is great, but at the same time, we need to have interactions. So, what is the proper balance between family life and then your own personal life? Like, what's the good balance?
A good balance between family life and personal life would be, I would say with family, make it at least a, like, if possible, a seasonal thing. Um, you know, I would say if you're able to see, like, your parents, for example, you have your own family, or even being out on your own, make it a thing to see your parents at least, once every season. That would be on the minimum to a good, healthy connect and do your thing. Fr- Friends, depending on your own personal situation, got your family, maybe see your friends maybe once a month or so. But if you're consistently alone, living on yourself by yourself, I recommend at least try to do at least once a week, maybe. I'm trying to think of any other scenarios, but that sounds to me like a good, healthy balance there.
Now, like I said, I'm not saying that you actually have to travel, but try doing this. Try having a Zoom meeting with family and friends to stay connected so you can actually pick up on their actual intent of what they're trying to say, right? Like, this is a great way to interact because you can actually have a voice. You can have your face. You can see what the person is trying to convey by body language, whatever it may be. This is another good way. If you're too far away, if you're away for college, or if your job has you traveling a lot, just take a day. Take one day to call out and reach, bring up a Zoom meeting, have everybody join in, talk to each other. That's a great way to do it. Now, if you do live a little bit closer to family and friends, why not just make it a once a week? Go in, drop in, and say hi, and talk to them, and have a barbecue or have a dinner together. Do something. Um, which leads me into the perception of time, right? The perception of the time that we have and what we can accomplish, because we only got 24 hours in a day. You got 365 days in a year, and the average human lives around 70 to 80 years old nowadays, right? We have to find a good balance between that, right? So, how do we do that? How do we find that balance? Personally, I think it's kind of like I say 70% of the time I'm working on myself. I'm trying to become better for myself, right? 20% of the time I'm trying to interact with my friends, right? And the other 10%, that's just my time to kind of reflect on everything that I've absorbed. That's my time for solitude. That 10% of my time is for solitude. And I think that's a good way to approach it, in my opinion, because I spend 70% of the time working on myself, 20% of the time spending it with friends and family, and then 10% of it just being to myself, kind of absorbing information that I've had. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Your opinions on how you kind of approach this interaction?
Um, I personally don't got really much opinions. As I said earlier, like I kind of go with the flow. Any feeling of loneliness, I call someone or interact with them or something like that. But I think um, at the shift of time perception here, I think right now would be probably a decent time to take a small little break. Then we'll get back and continue on. All right, catch you in a little bit.
All right. We'll catch you in a bit, everybody. And we are back. Thank you for your patience on that little break of ours. So, as we left off last, the perception of time and what is the reality of the time nowadays, and why does it seem to be moving so much faster than what it was? I'm going to hand it over to Tommy to see what he thinks.
Perception of time, everything's really seems to be speeding up. So that's a pretty solid thing to state there, but there are plenty of other influences on our perception of the time, such as a lot of modern technology and stuff. When you're having fun doing things, yes, time does seem to go by really fast. But I'm just saying more of your own personal time where you would just sit down, talk with family, and reflect. Now it's you got a TV or a phone, and you're on that makes this perception of time seems to be going by quicker because on your phone you're looking through it. You really don't understand how much time you're actually wasting while you're doing that. Um, it's just a lot of inputs into your mind at once with just phone, TV, and stuff. It makes time seem like it just flies by. It, but when you're just kind of just in a normal conversation with someone and away from the technology, like we all know if you've been camping and stuff, you go out there, it seems like your days do seem longer per se than being at home. It's more of getting away from the world itself with all its influences, which will make time seem to slow down a little bit more, as I mentioned, camping, for example.
So yeah, I can agree that we have a lot of external stimuli nowadays that seems to make time go a lot faster. Um, and also the age does come into effect because then you start to as you get older, you start to understand what time actually is and the perception of time. Right. So I think those kind of coincide as well. When you have, like you said, you have a lot of external stimuli nowadays. You have people that have their phones constantly and stuff like that. At the same time, I'm not saying that it's not just the age, but I'm also definitely agreeing with the whole external stimuli. We have so much that we can do, and it just seems like time just flies by because you spend so much time on one area of things, or you're in your phone. You're what I call what everybody calls doom scrolling, just to try to get like a dopamine hit. Almost, it seems like that you're going for that type of feeling. You want that instant gratification constantly. I think that that is a very good point to determine like our perception of time, and then it also I think also that the perception of time and technology. When you spend so much time on your technology, you're forcing yourself to be secluded as well, which also ties into our previous conversation. And yeah, I think they coincide the social media, or even if it's just playing video games. I mean, everybody's had that one night when they're up, you know, up until the next day playing video games or watching their favorite TV show, binge watching whatever it may be, right? Um, that's a very logical reasoning to it. So we're gonna start closing up the podcast here shortly, because I think we hit a lot of very important points on the subjects that we had today. So overall, it is okay to be secluded. It is okay to worry about other things that are going on. It is okay not to focus on a family if that's your decision. It is okay to do all these things. What we're saying is we only have so much time to do what we want to do. I will never tell you guys what you need to do, but we need to be concerned about the real life effects of what's going on nowadays. The reality is, as we've grown more advanced, we forgot how to interact with each other. And that's just the truth. We lost the things that drive us. Every human craves to be together. Right? That's just the way civilization's always been. We built the world up from nothing, and we did it together. I think we forgot about that somewhere along the line. Right? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. With technology comes advancements. With advancements comes better ways of life. But also, all the good intentions in the world on a subject can often lead to unprecedented outcomes. Right? We have the loneliness epidemic, which we'll get into a little bit more. We're just kind of talking about what it is to be human nowadays. And our personal experiences, we have very good human connections outside of this. Tommy and myself, we both have very good very good human interaction with other people. Yes, we do enjoy being alone, but at the same time, we're not really alone, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's genuinely nothing wrong with it. It is okay to be secluded sometimes, but what we're concerned about is how does this actually affect the world around us? People are shut off from one another. People don't care much anymore. Everybody's just trying to make ends meet. I understand that. You have your life. You got to live it. You got to make money. You got to do these things. But also don't forget you need to take time for yourself and for your family, for your friends. Nurture those relationships. Nurture yourself in that same time. The more genuine interaction that you have with people, I can say for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people can agree with this. The more social interaction you have, whether it be a positive one or a negative one, you can still reflect on it when you get home. And you can say, okay, well, what I really liked about that was I grew more connected to this person. Or I didn't agree with this person, but you know what? I see their point of view and I don't necessarily need to hate them. It's just a very nihilistic way of looking at things. It's just seeing everything, cut yourself off from everybody. We're not saying that you should or you shouldn't. There are some things that need to be cut off. We're not going into those, but like if you're in a bad situation, yeah, and you think you need to cut that person off and cut yourself out of things, that's fine. Just remember, don't overdo it. Give yourself time to heal, but do not be afraid to interact with people again. I think that's the biggest issue. Everybody needs that time to heal, and then they forget that regardless of what may or may not happen, I much rather go through life saying that I tried to interact with people, that I tried to build relationships with people. Being lonely is horrible. Being stuck in your thoughts in your own head with nobody to hear you is a horrible feeling. It is probably one of the most painful feelings. Reach out to somebody. Tell them that you love them. You don't have to be in love with them, but tell them that you see them and that you love them for who they are. Right? That's the only thing that we can realistically do. We're all human. We need these interactions. We need to open ourselves up and be open to the idea of interacting with other people. But with that, I'm going to send it over to Tommy and let him do his closing thoughts on the subject, and then we're going to wrap this up for y'all.
Yeah, yeah. As Seth was saying, just make make the attempt to connect with someone, even if it's not exactly what your heart's wanting a connection with someone. Even if you were just to say a simple hello to someone or have a good day, or just when you're out and about, it does make an impact. And one of those people might be one of the best friends in your life that you end up running across. You just got to make the effort to say, hey, just a simple hello or something like that. And you just never know where something could lead into. Like they might mention back, they like your shirt, then you guys click and you have a really good friend. It's just don't be afraid to make the attempt. And if someone, or vice versa, if you're the person that doesn't want to talk to someone, still, I encourage you to have the courage to be like, talk back to them, because that's just honestly, to me, that's common decency to talk to someone that talks to you, even stranger or not. Like, we're in a public place where we could interact with others. we need to have more of a team-based thing because life is hard and we need to work as a team. And, you know, out of all these petty little reasons, we're all still just trying to make it by. Um, there was something else I was going to say, but I completely forgot about it. But yeah, just take the time, try to interact with someone. And if really all else fails, personally, I just say pick up your Bible. Jesus is always there. And that loneliness will be gone. You just even ask God to send someone into your path or whatever. Just, you know, spend time in prayer or even reading the Bible. That would help dramatically too. Yeah, I'll let Seth go ahead and close out this cast now.
Yeah, like he was saying, yeah, just figure out something to keep yourselves entertained. If you are alone, make sure that you can get perspectives, right? Try to interact with people. We're not saying open up your heart and let them in, but what we're trying to say is just remember we're all human and we're trying the best that we can. We may not agree on everything, but we are still human. With that, I would like to thank you all for joining us on this podcast. And, you know, like I said, if you guys have liked the video, go ahead, drop a like. If you guys find yourself coming to our content a little bit more, I'm not saying you have to, but go ahead and hit a subscribe button down below. And with that, it's been an awesome conversation once again with Tommy. I appreciate his time and his effort that he puts into this with me. And we're gonna let you guys have a wonderful and blessed rest of the night. With that being said, this is the Looking Gas podcast signing off.